Hi, and welcome to today's webinar on ASD and Travel Part 2, Planes, Trains, and Cruises. Before we begin, I would like to make a couple of announcements. We provide this free webinar series so that everyone can have access to this information no matter where you may live. We host several webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule. Just go to our website at www.johnson-center.org and click on the webinars button on the right-hand side. New webinars and events are added often, so if you're not on our email list, I encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List button that appears on the homepage. To get the most up-to-date news and events from the Johnson Center, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as we often announce grant and scholarship Hi, and welcome to today's webinar on ASD and Travel Part 2, Planes, Trains, and Cruises. Before we begin, I would like to make a couple of announcements. We provide this free webinar series so that everyone can have access to this information no matter where you may live. We host several webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule. Just go to our website at www.johnson-center.org and click on the webinars button on the right-hand side. New webinars and events are added often, so if you're not on our email list, I encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List button that appears on the homepage. To get the most up-to-date news and events from the Johnson Center, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as we often announce grant and scholarships, research opportunities, and special events and presentations there. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Johnson Center, where you will find a library of several of our past webinars covering a wide variety of topics. For those of you who are in Austin or nearby, be sure to follow our social media pages for upcoming announcements about summer camps and classes, our April Teddy Bear Clinic, a fun online auction coming up in April, and a special announcement for new grants and scholarships for diagnostic and counseling services. And be sure to follow our colleagues at the Autism Research Institute as they host their own webinar initiative, and they share some great resources on their website and social media pages. If you would like a certificate of attendance after today's webinar, look for a follow-up email in your mailbox 1 hour after the webinar concludes, or look for the link on our YouTube channel in the webinar description. It will contain instructions on how to get your certificate. If you have questions during the live webinar, you may type them into your GoToWebinar control panel. If you are watching a recording of this webinar, you may email questions to the presenter at info@johnson-center.org. So let's get started. Today's webinar is presented by Wendy Richardson. Wendy has spent more than a decade working in the autism community. Here at the Johnson Center, she has been involved as a family support coordinator, a research coordinator, and more. Her efforts are always been focused on providing information, education, and empowerment for people with autism and their families. Please welcome Wendy Richardson.
Hi, welcome. One moment. I'll be right with you. And here we go. This webinar is part 2 of ASD and Travel, Planes, Trains, and Cruises. I'm going to review the most appreciated tips that we gave in webinar 1, and I'm going to cover traveling on a cruise and on a train, and the questions you should ask to be sure that you're accessing all of the great offerings out there. Previously, we talked about plane travel and tips and tricks to make it successful. Today, we'll focus on trains and cruises with a short review of plane travel. We know that travel can be tricky. When you're planning to go on a family vacation, it can be exciting and equally as stressful. Planning a trip with accommodations for a child or adult with special needs can increase a parent's or caregiver's stress level. We wanted to tackle this subject because we've consistently heard that travel is a missing piece for our patients. When travel is challenging, it reduces the opportunities for families that live far from each other to share holidays, see the country, or other important celebrations. I hope that this webinar offers helpful information that will make your travel plans more enjoyable and less stressful. Let's do a quick review. So these are the things that parents appreciated in webinar 1. No matter how you plan to travel, success is in the preparation. Being prepared is key, and you can't start prepping for your trip too early. One important way to prepare is the countdown. It can relieve your child's stress and anxiety about when the trip is going to happen, and it also adds to the excitement of your travel. There are a million free downloadable countdowns on the web. I printed this out and I tack it up on the fridge, and everyone gets counting. Whether it's a plane, train, or cruise, it can be helpful to do a visual schedule for your travel day. First, the getting dressed, the packing the car with the suitcases, and all of the steps that you'll encounter on boarding a plane or cruise ship. For a new traveler, these days will look very different from a typical day, and walking through the visual schedule multiple times can be helpful. Another preparation item is a timetable. If your child likes to keep track of time, you can make a visual timetable of the starts, stops, the meals, the plane landings, or the cruise ship boarding to help set expectations of when things will occur on the trip. And there's apps for this. So there's a few apps that make it easy to create a visual schedule. Ones like these cost about $15. I haven't used the one shown, but there are a variety of this type available. I like to take photos of each item my child should pack and create a schedule that they can match the items to. If you don't have a color printer to do this, there's millions of clip art images that you can print in black and white to create your own schedule. Here's a tip for plane travel. Create a social story and then act out what happens on a plane. You can make it super fun and playful and set up chairs in the living room so it looks like the aisles of a plane, and pretend you're the flight attendant and ask your child the questions that flight attendants will ask. You can have your child practice how to respond to the flight attendant or the person sitting next to them. Some scenarios that you might create a social story for: walking through security, boarding and exiting an airplane, using the bathroom on a plane, dealing with turbulence, how to do the takeoff and the landing and anticipating ear pressure. I use a social story creator app from the iTunes store. It's Social Story Creator by Touch Autism, but I think there's a few out there. We also found that special needs cruise lines have their own social stories about the first days on board the ship, and they will email them to you 2 to 4 weeks prior to the journey, so you have plenty of time to review it with your child. Together with your child, you can make a chart of the start of the day to the end of the day and the toiletries and things that are needed for the entire day. When preparing for travel, think about your child's sensitivities. Does he or she have trouble with loud noises? If so, you're going to want to remember the noise canceling headphones or bring earplugs. If there's something that your child doesn't usually wear, start practicing weeks ahead at home, especially with those headphones. And practice, practice, practice is key. because anything new that you're going to implement on the trip, you want to be introducing weeks ahead of time. And if you lived in a rainy place like in Seattle, like I did, you're even going to have to practice wearing sunglasses, especially if you're going to land in bright, sunny Hawaii and you need your child to protect their eyes. So again, practice all these new things that they may not be used to. And don't forget the gum or snacks to avoid the ear pressure on the airplane takeoff and landing. Whether it's for the car, the train, or plane, think of your child's daily routine and bring along the necessities that help him or her through the day. Snacks, toys, books, electronics, or assistive communication tools. Show your child what you're packing, just in case he or she feels any angst about you forgetting any of the favorite items. Add to your suitcase of distractions some new items. And another tip is to pack a fun bag with toys that they haven't seen in a while. So you're going to want to set those aside before the day of the trip. Or borrowed toys so that they have something novel to play with that gets their attention. Also, in your preparation, you want to make sure that you have the correct identification. Autism Speaks currently has an alert on their website that says new air travel regulations. So adult passengers ages 18 and over are required to show a U.S. federal or state-issued ID. And it has to contain a name, date of birth, gender, expiration date, as well as a tamper-resistant feature in order to be allowed through the checkpoint and onto flights. And some of the IDs that can be included are a driver's license, a state ID card, a U.S. passport, and preparing documents. By far the most important to remember are your important documents. You want to make sure they're always with you, either in your carry-on or your purse or on your body. I also like to have a backup copy of things on a little thumb drive that I can bring. I also like to email myself documents so I can just quickly bring them up in my email if I need to. And there's nothing worse than getting to the airport and realizing one child's passport is on the kitchen table at home. So I like to leave a post-it on the door to double check my list before I leave the house. And some of the documents that you want to think about: boarding passes, tickets, reservation sheets, passports, and copies of those passports, any birth certificates, driver's licenses, international driver's permits. You may need custody papers notarized with consent from another parent, depending on custody status. And that's something that could take weeks of preparation, so you want that on your list ahead of time. Car insurance. Are you renting a car where you're going? Travel insurance. Copies of any travel insurance that you've purchased. Membership cards for associations like AAA, if you booked hotels with discounts. Or sometimes those discount cards, like an entertainment card or a Costco membership card, are needed for discounts on hotels or theme parks, and you may actually have to show the card, so you don't want to forget those. And then the medically related cards, the prescription copies. Some people take their medical history downloaded on a thumb drive or memory chip in case you need to see a doctor in a new city. You want to have that available to you. Some of the things that you do might need a doctor's note describing a diagnosis or allergies. For Amtrak, they do need some proof of disability, so you want to keep that doctor's note with you or easily accessible. Something else is the TSA card, and it can be presented to a TSA officer for travelers requiring special accommodations or that are concerned about the security screening process at the airport. So that's the Transportation Safety Association that we're talking about. I downloaded this card from the TSA.gov website, and it's a great tool to present at security if you have any needs or concerns. This free downloadable card reads, TSA notification card, individuals with disabilities and medical conditions. I have the following health condition, disability, or medical device that may affect my screening. And then there's a blank so you can write your health condition or what you feel they need to know. I understand that alternate procedures providing an equivalent level of security screening are available and can be done in private. I also understand that presenting this card does not exempt me from screening. And then on the back, it has the phone numbers that you need and says call 72 hours prior to traveling to request the assistance of a passenger support specialist at the checkpoint. If a passenger support specialist is not available, you may ask for a supervisory TSA officer at the checkpoint. So whether you call 72 hours prior or not, you should be able to use this card and get help. Again, even if you haven't called, there should be people that can help you if you want the private screening or assistance during that security area. So just again, preparing for a flight, you want to bring those headphones for loud noises or electronics to use. Also, you want to know when you can have your electronics on and off and prepare your child for those disruptions in use. So knowing that it's turned off during takeoff or landing, you want to prepare your child that there will be those disruptions. Also sensitivity to smells. When the coffee cart comes around and the smell could be bothersome to your child, you can have a Ziploc with cotton balls with a preferred smell like lavender on them. And if you just open the Ziploc, sometimes that can help block out other smells like the coffee and can be helpful. Have your magic suitcase of fun ready with those novel toys and distractions. And the gum or candies to help with takeoff and landing ear pressure and ear popping. And have your favorite snacks ready. Another great way to prepare for a first flight is to visit the airport. There are special programs to assist you with getting your child familiar with the airport layout, security, and all the areas you'll encounter when flying. Wings for Autism, Wings for All provide airport rehearsals specially designed for individuals with autism spectrum disorders and individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The programs are designed to alleviate the stress that families who have a child with autism or intellectual and developmental disabilities experience when flying. It provides families the opportunity to practice entering the airport, obtaining boarding passes, going through security, and boarding a plane. The airport, the airline, the Transportation Security Administration professionals, and other personnel also have the opportunity to observe, interact, and deliver their service in a structured learning environment. You can also contact airports directly, and some of them will help you do a run-through or work with you on having your child familiar with an airport before that first flight. So whether it's the train station, cruise boarding, or airport security, talk with your family about where to meet if you're separated. So if you get selected for a longer baggage check and they do not, they'll know not to leave the security area without you, or to meet you by a certain helper at the desk of the cruise boarding area, or where at the train counter will you all meet. So the designated meeting spot is important. Let's move on to a cruise. There are special cruise ships that cater to those with special needs. These companies specialize in assisting adults and families in accommodating the typical cruise services, as well as providing specialized respite and private activities that allow guests to use the ship's entertainment venues in an accommodated and assisted manner. Some cruise ships have some accommodation programs, but other cruise ships use special needs companies that make every part of the cruise available to those with special needs. So there's two different kinds. Special needs cruises cater their vacation services to adults and children with special needs, including autism, Down syndrome, and all cognitive, intellectual, and developmental disabilities, who travel with their family, their group home, or their caregiver. Let's look at questions that you'll want to ask to make sure you're getting all of your needs met when you select a cruise. So most of the cruises cater to any age. So again, children traveling with their family, teenagers traveling with their family or caregiver, adults with a caregiver, family, group home, or just a larger group that has come together to take the cruise together. One of the first questions to ask is, does the cruise line have dedicated staff to expedite boarding the ship and exiting the ship? So we can see there's long lines here. Does a dedicated staff member meet you at the port upon arrival and direct you to where to go and offer assistance with luggage and answer questions? Is there priority check-in at the port? This is a key element if there are issues with waiting in line, crowded areas, and any assisted devices used for mobility. And you also want to ask, is there a priority boarding waiting area that has appropriate seating and assistance and quiet if needed? You will likely be provided special luggage tags from the cruise line. Before you arrive at the cruise terminal, use your special tags on all of your luggage. If you do not have a dedicated cruise support person assigned to you to walk you through boarding, you may have to leave your luggage at a designated drop-off, or there may be a porter, a cruise ship employee that will take your luggage for you to the appropriate place. And sometimes there's just a designated drop-off point that may have a security guard overseeing the luggage garage or the luggage stall. What's a muster drill? Sometimes referred to as a lifeboat drill or a boat drill. It's an exercise that's conducted by the crew of the ship prior to embarking on a voyage. A muster drill prepares passengers for safe evacuation in the event of an emergency on board the ship and familiarizes the crew and the passengers with escape routes. In a muster drill, the use of life vests and the escape routes from the ship are explained to the passengers. It's typically conducted approximately 30 minutes prior to the ship's scheduled departure time, and all guests must remain silent during the drill so everyone will be able to hear the safety announcements from the captain. To alert that a drill is in progress, a general emergency alarm is sounded, and the captain then explains what the passengers need to do. A special needs cruise will do their own private muster drill with your family to accommodate your special needs. Respite is a great offering for parents of children with special needs and something you want to get all of the details about far in advance so you can plan some of your own activities on the cruise. Some cruises offer respite for 3 to 1 hours at a time, and you will want to make sure that they have a staff person that you're comfortable with their level of training and the amount of respite available that you're looking forward to. Another offering of a special needs cruise is access to venues and shows. For example, private sessions assisted by staff at the ship's exciting venues and shows, or reserved seats at the show so you won't have to stand in long lines or arrive 30 minutes before the show just to get a good seat. An important question in staff selection may be, do they select their staff from a pre-qualified staff pool? And is it after they receive the completed questionnaires that you've sent in about your special needs? You want to ask if they're going to send you the questionnaire at least 6 weeks prior to the trip, so your child's current needs and behaviors are included. As many people plan their cruise a year in advance, because many sell out quickly, you don't want to supply information on your child's behaviors a year in advance. You want the cruise staff to have the most current information on your child and their needs. Some staff have degrees relating to child development, behavior therapy, and special education. Some cruises maintain hundreds of qualified professionals from around the country to ensure cruises are staffed appropriately. Some will have extensive experience in caring for children and adults of all ages with developmental disabilities. Some staff can manage any level of behaviors or functioning levels of any type of developmental disability. Typically, a special needs team will be led by a professional cruise group leader, so they'll have a supervisor. Typically, the staff can also provide strategies and resources to help families and individuals meet their unique needs on the ship. You should make sure that staff clear a national background check and sex offender check, and that special needs staff needs to conform to and integrate with all applicable cruise line policies. Activity questionnaires. So what if your child can't stand karaoke? You want to make sure that your special needs cruise will provide an event-oriented questionnaire to be completed prior to the vacation so they can learn the likes and dislikes, needs and expectations of each guest cruising with them. Ask if they have custom planning for your particular needs or how they adapt certain activities you are interested in. You probably don't want a set schedule, including karaoke, if it's not something your child enjoys. So customizing activities is key. And again, you want to look for a company that asks your needs, expectations, likes and dislikes at least 6 weeks in advance of your trip. Okay, so does the cruise coordinate all of the private activities or services and create that custom schedule? And are you offered everything the cruise has to offer that's adaptable? There's usually so much to pick from, more than there are hours in a day. Make sure your cruise contact informs you of how they can adapt for any challenges that your child may have. And these should be listed in the questionnaire you receive 6 weeks prior. Activities vary, but they may include live shows, deck parties, karaoke, goofy golf, arcades, dance parties, board game sessions, and then the group shore excursions. And again, there's so many, and every cruise is so different, and they offer so many different things. So let's talk about mobility, visual challenges, hearing. If you have needs in these areas, you want to ask, are rooms and social areas designed to accommodate guests with mobility impairments? Is Braille, if needed, used across the ship or just in certain areas? Are there sign language interpreters on staff if you need them? Are rooms specially designed to be wheelchair accessible? So lots of questions in those areas. You also want to ask if there are opportunities to socialize in low-key, quiet areas, if that's something you or your child needs. Are there private gatherings organized to enjoy the ship venues in a smaller setting or a private setting? And can you get away from the hustle and bustle of all the ship's activities in an area? Also ask, does the cruise line share with you the feedback from other families on excursions that are best suited to a family with similar challenges to yours? Many reviews offer valuable information from parents on the lay of the land at certain ports, the ease or difficulties of finding suitable restaurants in the event you have certain food preferences or special diets. So there's a lot of things that families can share with you, and some of the cruises do allow you access to their kind of reviews and information. How many bilingual staff members do they have if that's a need for your family? You also want to ask, do they offer a cruise specialist that will meet with you one-on-one to determine the best excursion plans for each place they visit? Someone that can answer questions about each port and let you know if other families are going, so that you could travel as a group if you prefer to do that. So that's a cruise specialist regarding off-boat excursions. Another great thing about a special needs cruise, some may offer to a staff person to accompany you on an excursion. So would it help to have a staff person help get your family to and from a nearby beach? Often that's very helpful. This type of service is usually negotiated between the family and the staff person, not the cruise line. So that probably won't be in the basic contract of the cruise, but absolutely ask if those services are available for off-boat excursion help. You also want to know, does the cruise team that you book your trip with communicate with the staff of the actual cruise ship that you'll be on? Or will it be your responsibility for communicating your needs once you arrive? So those are two very different approaches. You also want to ask, is there trained staff to interact with all abilities during the events and activities to promote participation and enrich the experience? Is there any aging out of the respite care, or is it the same for age 21 as under 21? You know, are there any age restrictions on any of the special needs services that you're looking forward to? So you want to ask those questions. Does the cruise line have their own app with pictures? The old PEX, Picture Exchange Communication System. Now cruise lines often have their apps with their very specific pictures of activities and places on the ship. So some cruise lines will send you a photo library of the events taking place during your particular cruise. You should be able to receive this 2 to 4 weeks ahead of your vacation, so you and your family can make a vacation picture schedule if that's something that's helpful to your family. And does your cruise offer special dietary accommodations? Many cruises require prior notice. Again, this is something that they should find out from you at least 6 weeks prior. Many cruise lines recognize food allergies like peanut or tree nut, milk allergy, egg allergy, soy, wheat allergy. And just kind of as a rule, you can expect from cruise lines vegetarian meals, lactose-free or soy substituted meals, low fat, some kosher requests, low sodium. And for those on a gluten and casein-free diet, many cruises offer, gluten and casein-free bread, safe French fries, chicken fingers, pancakes, chicken, steak, and fish. Also, many cruises let you bring your own gluten-free, casein-free, or allergen-recognized foods if they're in original packaging and unopened. So you may have just a suitcase devoted to your special foods. You can also ask the ship's chef to prepare unopened pastas or things like that again the packaging is unopened. And remember to give special requests or, your dietary accommodations plenty of notice to the cruise line. One thing, we didn't find any specific vegan or macrobiotic meals offered, so that might be something to consider. You want to ask, does your cruise offer reserved tables for all meals? So can you request seats near windows or exits? Are the reservations for the whole cruise for consistency that you want? Or if you want your child to mix it up and not be rigid about the same seating, is that allowed? Many times you are assigned for the cruise to certain tables, so you want to find out about that. And some cruises offer staff at meals to stay at your table and watch your child. Say you want to go and get a plate of food at the buffet, or the train staff can take them for a walk or do de-escalation exercises that you feel would be successful in the dining setting. So some have that great service available as well. Also, you may not think about dress codes. So many cruises have a dress code with a varying degree of formality, and some cruises have exemptions. So guests with special needs can wear what's more comfortable for them. If your child is particular about clothing, you may want to choose a cruise that has the exemption, or make sure the dining areas that don't require a certain dress code meets your needs. So there's 2 ways to go about that. Service animals. Will your service animal be welcome? Many cruises welcome guests with service animals on board their ships. How do you handle walking your dog? They'll either have a wooden box with 4 feet of sod or a blanket of grass in a plastic tray on a designated pet relief area, open deck. So typically anywhere there's public access, a service animal would be welcome. Just remember, there's possibly very lengthy paperwork requirements, and they vary greatly depending on where you're going, so I won't cover them here, but like with other paperwork, keep a copy with you of whatever you've submitted to the cruise line or to the country you're visiting, and a thumb drive with PDFs of your originals may be helpful in a pinch. So some of the companies that provide special needs cruises are Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, Norwegian, Disney, and Carnival Cruise Lines. And there is a difference between autism-friendly ships and then the services like Autism on the Seas. So some ships have a few features or areas or events for special needs guests, and other companies are devoted to adapting all the cruise offerings to each special needs guest. So you want to ask all the questions that we've covered today when you're deciding between cruise companies. So as an example, Celebrity Cruises offers autism-friendly initiatives for families with autism. So this includes sensory-friendly films and toys, dietary menu options, and overall autism-friendly training for the Fun Factory staff. So that's just a special area for kiddos. Additionally, they offer a wide range of autism-friendly services, that priority check-in, boarding and departure, a Fun Factory play area, toilet training, policy exception, special dietary accommodations with gluten-free and dairy-free meals, and pagers or phones for parents of children while signed in the care of the play areas. On the other hand, for example, Autism on the Seas, which has been sailing autism-friendly cruises since 2007, caters to families' needs with professionally trained staff. The program, which is open to children and adults with autism, includes perks like front-of-the-line service, exclusive parties, the reserved venues, private activities for parents and caregivers, and that respite time. The other thing is Autism on the Seas cruises are offered on a number of different lines. So all those different Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, and Disney cruise lines. There are nearly 50 scheduled each year. And then there are other companies, such as Cruising with Autism, but they might charter cruise ships on select dates throughout the year. So not the same volume as the Autism on the Seas company. So let's talk about trains. When I was reading a New York Times article a few years ago titled "Children with Autism Connecting via Transit," it was interesting. The author wrote, "Like many children with autism spectrum disorder, Robbie is fascinated by trains and buses, entranced by their motion and predictability. And for years, these children crowded the exhibitions of the modest New York Transit Museum, chattering about schedules and engine components and old subway maps." So the New York Transit Museum is a museum that displays historical artifacts of the New York subway, bus, and rail systems in New York City. And the museum is located in an actual subway station in Brooklyn. And that New York Transit Museum created a program 6 years ago, Subway Sleuths, that has welcomed almost 100 school children, grade school age, and they have sessions for kids that are interested, that are on the spectrum. It's also wheelchair accessible, as you see in that photo. And I liked Dr. Simon Baron-Cohen, who is the director of the Autism Research Center at the University of Cambridge, said, "People with autism show a fascination with transportation systems because they can readily be systemized, either as a mechanical system or as a timetable system." So if your child loves trains, you could build a trip around a visit to this museum, and that may be a great vacation. Or for those children that love trains but don't live in a city with a subway to ride, parents can seek out Amtrak or other trains for their children to have that train experience. So the U.S. may be the land of the car, but it is also one of the greatest countries in the world to be explored by passenger train. There are a number of private operators who offer exclusive packages on private passenger trains, but it is on board the trains of the state-owned and subsidized Amtrak that most tourists and travelers experience America by rail. So in addition to Amtrak, throughout the United States, there are some tourist trains that have been maintained or rebuilt as privately owned tourist lines, which occasionally connect to Amtrak or regional systems. But most of these lines use old train equipment, such as steam locomotives, that have been refurbished. We'll talk mostly about Amtrak today, as it is available to most people. So for one example, a journey on Amtrak is the California Zephyr, an Amtrak train from Chicago to Sacramento, California. And it's timed so passengers will see the most scenic points of the Sierras and Rockies, regardless of the direction traveled. And that route is about 2,400 miles. And there's also, Amtrak offers other great kind of pre-packaged trips. So the packages include meals, day journeys off the trains, and more activities. For example, one is America's Beautiful West. That's a 14-day vacation, again, with journeys off the train. America's Great National Parks. That's 5 of America's most awe-inspiring sites, and this is a 2-week round-trip journey. Or even a Yellowstone and Glacier adventure. That's 11 days to the Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, and that combines travel aboard iconic trains with escorted sightseeing along the path followed by America's pioneers. So lots to see and learn. And also, it's fun to sleep on the train. You can plan an overnight trip on an Amtrak train. Amtrak markets their sleeper accommodations as first class with a level of service that aims to be equal to that of a hotel. And in addition to a private room on board the train, first class passengers can take advantage of a number of other things like all onboard meals are included in the cost of your ticket, an onboard attendant service, fresh linens and towel service. So like a hotel. This is a photo of the dining cart, the Superliner lounge car. On the shortest of journeys, Amtrak offers at-seat trolley service of drinks and light refreshments. On most journeys, however, there will be a dedicated cafe or lounge car that offers marginally broader selection of hot and cold drinks and refreshments, although all the snacks are pre-packed and all the hot snacks are microwaved. Cafe and lounge cars offer an open area of seating around tables that will be open. So a service attendant who runs a dining car will seat travelers together to fill a table instead of assigning individuals or couples to tables by themselves. They will seat families together. This practice is something that surprised most people unfamiliar with it. So you'll eat with other people and meet new people, likely. For longer trips on all trains with meal service, passengers with a disability can request that meals be brought to their room or seat, and meals are provided as part of the cost of travel for those who are traveling with a sleeping accommodation. Alternative menu options for those with special dietary requirements are also available. And you want to look at if you're going to bring personal food or medication before you travel, what the guidelines on those are. And Amtrak makes it easy to purchase tickets for passengers with a disability. So you can go to amtrak.com and there's questions that are asked about a disability. Do you need space for a wheeled mobility device? Do you need to travel with a companion? So you want to do those things probably online or by calling Amtrak. For a short trip, Amtrak has small excursions called Kids and Trains. This one is a seasonal program on the Pacific Surfliner and San Joaquin trains, where school and youth groups plus their chaperones experience train travel at significantly reduced fares. Everyone in the group, both children and adults, may ride at the same low price. And on this, they explore California while visiting educational destinations along the way. So this program can support classroom curriculum, special projects, or just simply to have a fun excursion on a train. And you want to book this 30 days in advance of the date that you would like to do it. Amtrak tickets generally do not indicate a coach or seat number, merely that you have a place in a reserved coach. So you want to pay close attention to announcements and station staff who will tell you where to wait to board the train. Attendants will need to see your ticket or your pass as you board the train, and they will direct you towards the carriage you should sit in. In some cases, your ticket may show a seat reservation number and a carriage number. Carriage numbers are displayed on the doors, and you want to pay attention to these as the trains roll in so you can be at the right spot on the platform, time to get in your carriage. Some stations have indicators on the platform to show where each carriage will stop. One interesting thing I found, while Amtrak welcomes passengers with disability, there seems to be a stringent process to prove a disability. And note that not all Amtrak stations can currently accommodate wheeled mobility device boarding. So you must provide written documentation of your disability at the ticket counter and when boarding a train if you're asking for special accommodations. Acceptable documentation includes transit system ID cards, membership cards from a disability organization, a letter from your physician, Medicare card if you're under 65, a veteran's ID, disabled or accessible parking placard that's issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles, and just a photocopy is acceptable. You don't have to bring the placard. So passengers are not required to indicate the type of disability they have, only that they require the accessible features due to a disability. So conductors on trains with accessible room accommodations will provide you with a self-certification form to be completed by the person with the disability. Yeah, and you want to absolutely book at least 14 days in advance so you can request seating near a restroom or on a lower level, or those different accommodations that you feel like you'll need. And again, you need to make a reservation if you have a wheeled mobility device, if you need to travel in a seat but stow your wheelchair, the accessible sleep accommodations. So any of those you do need to reserve in advance. An Amtrak does not require that a companion or attendant accompany a passenger with a disability. However, if a passenger anticipates that he or she may need personal care assistance during the trip, such as assistance with feeding, bathing, dressing, medicating, or toileting, the passenger must travel with an attendant who can provide such assistance. So the Amtrak train crews are not required or permitted to provide personal care assistance to passengers. Amtrak does offer a 10% discount for people traveling with a passenger with a disability. They call that a companion fare. And those designated as companions must be 18 years of age or older. Service animals are welcome on Amtrak. They define service animals as animals that are trained to perform a specific task for the benefit of a person with a disability and are permitted in all areas where passengers are allowed. Amtrak personnel may ask what task the service animal performs. Pets and animals not considered service animals. So these following animals are considered pets and not service animals. Comfort animals. So animals not trained to perform a specific task, but which are said to provide emotional support or relieve anxiety simply by their presence. For example, by the passenger holding or petting the animal. Search and rescue dogs. So animals that are trained generally, but not to assist a particular passenger, are not considered service animals. So in most cases on board Amtrak, personnel will be available to assist passengers to their seat and to store a wheelchair. Personnel can also provide other basic assistance, such as delivering food to your seat and providing in-person announcements. Again, if a passenger anticipates needing personal care assistance during the trip, that passenger must travel with an attendant or companion. So remember to bring all the familiar things that your child would want on the train. Toys, blankets, games, books, cards, and items that don't require Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi may be spotty along your trip. It may not always be available, so you don't want to depend on it. You want to pack those other things. You can also make a list of things you want your children to spot out the window as you travel on the train. Certain kinds of trees, certain kinds of buildings. You can start with a short trip to gauge the success to determine if you want to do a longer train vacation. So many kids love traveling by train. It's a big, powerful machine, but compact and friendly inside the train car. So whether it's by plane, train, or cruise, the Johnson Center wishes you safe and enjoyable travels. Thank you for attending the Travel Tips webinar. Went a little bit long, so I'm afraid I don't have time for questions. But if you have questions, please email us, info@johnson-center.org. Thanks so much.